Welcome to Echoes of Faith, where stories of hope, resilience, and grace inspire us to find the light in every challenge.
In a world often clouded by skepticism and doubt, one man's journey takes an unexpected turn. Meet Miles Darby, a hardened journalist whose sharp wit and cynicism have defined his career. But when he's assigned to cover a story on a humble soup kitchen, Miles encounters a world of compassion, resilience, and unexpected grace. Through the stories of those who give and those who receive, Miles is challenged to confront his own beliefs and rediscover the power of faith, kindness, and humanity. Join us as we dive into The Unexpected Visitor, a heartwarming tale that reminds us all of the profound impact of simple acts of love and connection. Let this story inspire you, touch your heart, and echo faith in your life. Let's begin. Miles Darby had spent years building a career on skepticism. As a journalist for the Metro Chronicle, he was known for his sharp wit and unflinching commentary. Stories of political scandals and corporate greed were his bread and butter. Compassion? He'd call it naivety. So when his editor handed him an assignment to cover a local soup kitchen, Miles thought it was some kind of joke. Seriously? A human interest story? He scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Yes, Miles, his editor replied, his tone curt. After that hit piece you wrote about the mayor's fundraiser, we've had enough complaints to last a lifetime. You're on thin ice. Maybe this assignment will remind you how to connect with people. And let's face it, your reputation could use some softening. Miles gritted his teeth. Being demoted to a fluff piece felt like a slap in the face. A man of his stature, a man with a penthouse apartment and a luxury car, shouldn't be wasting time in places like soup kitchens. But orders were orders. Reluctantly, Miles found himself on the steps of the Good Shepherd soup kitchen the next morning. The brick building was modest, with a hand-painted sign above the door that read, "Come as you are." Inside, the hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes filled the air. The aroma of fresh bread and warm soup wafted out as a volunteer held the door open for him. "Morning! Come in," said the volunteer, a wiry man in his 60s with a kind smile. "I'm Tom." Miles nodded curtly, stepping inside. His eyes scanned the room, notepad in hand, ready to jot down cliches. But the scene before him gave him pause. Tables were crowded with people of all ages, mothers with children, elderly men clutching coffee cups, and teenagers with weary eyes. Volunteers moved through the room with practiced ease, serving meals and offering words of encouragement. "Can I help you?" asked a woman in an apron. She appeared to be in her 40s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and a compassionate gaze. "Miles Darby, the Metro Chronicle," he said, flashing his press badge. "I'm here to write about this place." "Oh, you're the reporter. I'm Susan, the director here," she said, shaking his hand. "Feel free to observe and ask questions. We've got nothing to hide." Miles nodded, stepping back to blend into the background. He watched as Susan crouched to speak with a young boy clutching a stuffed animal. She handed him a plate of food and ruffled his hair, her warmth palpable even from a distance. Something about the scene stirred an uncomfortable feeling in Miles, but he shook it off. He approached a volunteer removing paper plates. "Why do you do this?" he asked, pen and paper poised. The young man shrugged, smiling. "Why not? Helping people feels good. Besides, I used to be on the other side of this table." Miles arched an eyebrow. "You were homeless?" "Yeah, lost my job, my apartment. Good Shepherd helped me get back on my feet," the man said, before hurrying off to serve another table. As the hours passed, Miles moved through the room, collecting snippets of conversations and taking notes. He interviewed a single mother who came here to feed her kids, a retired teacher who volunteered to stay busy, and a teenager trying to turn his life around after a brush with the law. Each story chipped away at Miles's cynicism, though he refused to admit it. Then he met David. David was stacking chairs near the back of the room, his tailored coat, now faded and worn, hinting at a more prosperous past. His movements were calm and deliberate, and his smile genuine as he exchanged kind words with everyone around him. Intrigued, Miles approached. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Miles said, holding up his notepad. David looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sure, name's David." "I couldn't help but notice," Miles began. "You seem different from some of the other volunteers." David chuckled, gesturing for Miles to follow him as he continued his work. "I wasn't always here, you know. I used to be a hedge fund manager, made millions. But a bad investment wiped me out. I lost the house, the car, everything." "And now you're here," Miles said, trying to mask his incredulity. "How did that happen?" David's gaze softened. "When I lost everything, I thought my life was over. I spent months angry and bitter, blaming the world. Then one day, I wandered into this very soup kitchen, desperate for food and even more desperate for hope." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "I believe God led me here. And with Him, I realized there was more to life than just making money, helping others here. It's given me a purpose I never had, even when I was rich." Miles scribbled furiously, though his thoughts were more chaotic than his notes. "Doesn't it bother you," he asked finally, "that you lost everything?" David smiled. "It did at first, but then I realized something. True wealth isn't in what you own, it's in what you give. And here, I've discovered riches beyond anything I ever imagined." Miles stared at David, his mind racing. The man's words echoed in his head, challenging the very core of everything he had believed in. He had spent his career tearing down the powerful, exposing their greed and corruption. But here was a man who had lost it all and found something more valuable in return. As the afternoon turned to evening, Miles found himself immersed in the world of the soup kitchen in a way he never expected. He helped serve meals, washed dishes alongside the volunteers, and even shared a few laughs with some of the regulars. With each passing moment, his hardened shell began to crack, revealing a glimmer of something he hadn't felt in years: empathy. As the last of the dinner crowd dispersed and the volunteers began cleaning up, Miles lingered by the entrance, deep in thought. Susan approached him, her apron now stained with food, but her eyes bright with kindness. "Thank you for coming today, Miles. I pray your article draws more attention to Good Shepherd, and that you found something here that resonated with you." Miles hesitated, his usual sharp retort caught in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded. "It will, more than I expected." Later that night, as he sat at his desk to write, Miles found the words flowing effortlessly. His usual biting prose felt out of place. Instead, he wrote, "In a small brick building on the corner of Main Street, I discovered something unexpected, a reflection of humanity's best qualities. At the Good Shepherd Soup Kitchen, people are not defined by their circumstances, but by their capacity to give and receive grace. In their faces, I saw hope, resilience, and the power of compassion. And perhaps, for the first time, I began to question my own assumptions about what truly matters." When he submitted the piece the next morning, his editor read it twice before looking up. "This is good, Miles," he said, surprised. "Really good." Miles nodded, unsure how to respond. As he walked out of the office, he felt lighter somehow, as though the weight of his cynicism had begun to lift. Though unsure if he believed in miracles, something about the soup kitchen and the people he met there had undeniably transformed him. For the first time in years, Miles Darby felt like more than a reporter. He felt like a man rediscovering his own humanity.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Remember, no matter what fires we face, faith will always carry us through. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to leave a comment. Subscribe for more stories that inspire and uplift. This is Echoes of Faith, where every story brings hope. If today's story moved you, be sure to discover more heartfelt journeys in the Echoes of Faith series. and uplift your spirit. Don't miss out on the next chapter. There's always more to uncover.